You are listening to The Vocal Technologist. Spoken tech for your ears.
So, the bit rattling around my head is this. We are pouring billions of dollars into these massive AI models, right? But the actual winners might just be the businesses with the absolute worst margins on the planet. Welcome to Vocal Technologist, where we nut out what is really happening behind the screen.
Yeah, glad to be here to, pick it apart.
Because the mission here is to suss out the hidden economics of this massive tech boom. We need to figure out who is actually making money, the unseen costs of these so-called AI agents, and really how the very DNA of startups is mutating right in front of us. Especially if you are a founder, because the ground truth is, well, it's very different from the headlines.
It is entirely necessary to get into the guts of it because the overarching narrative has completely detached from the numbers. I mean, people are swept up in the magic of the output. The demos look spectacular.
Totally, they look like magic.
Right, but we are going to untangle the cold reality of building and funding in this market. The physics of software economics are changing, and a lot of companies are essentially building on quicksand.
Well, let's start right at the foundation. Literally, the models themselves, the absolute behemoths that are just swallowing all the compute and all the capital. Because, I mean, from where I'm sitting, it looks like a terrible place to park your cash.
Right.
Why are the companies with the most funding sitting on the shakiest ground?
That is sort of the open secret right now in the venture capital world.
Yeah.
The foundation models themselves essentially have no durable business models. You have to think of a massive language model not as a piece of proprietary, highly defensible software, but as inventory.
Wait, inventory, like produce in a supermarket.
Exactly like produce. And like any inventory in a fast-moving industry, every single new release completely obsoletes the last one. The shelf life is just incredibly short.
Right.
Like if you spend $100 million training a model and 6 months later an open source alternative drops that matches its performance for free, your inventory just spoiled. Enterprises are shifting their mindset entirely. They are buying intelligence the exact same way they buy electricity.
So it's just a utility.
A pure utility, yeah. The model is, by design, the replaceable part of the workflow. We are seeing major enterprises deploy what is called the blank slate AI strategy.
Okay, what's that?
They do not want a highly opinionated, expensive proprietary model. They deliberately ship an unremarkable, cheap, open source base model, the blank slate, and they let their customers build all the actual value on top of it. Custom workflows, the data integrations.
I've got to push back a bit here because it still sounds a bit dodgy. You're telling me the brightest minds with the biggest hype have a fundamentally flawed business model. Surely they are building moats. What about all the peripheral companies, like the ones selling software to keep these models in check, the guardrails?
Right, the people selling better cages for the stochastic models. It is shovels all the way down. I mean, LLMs hallucinate. They make mistakes by their very nature because they're probabilistic prediction engines?
Yeah, they just guess the next word.
Exactly. So startups build software to cage them and keep the output predictable. But the fundamental flaw in building a better cage is that as the underlying models inevitably get smarter and hallucinate less, your cage becomes entirely obsolete. You are literally competing against the inevitable improvement of the foundation model itself.
Wow, right. So you're just filling a gap that's closing.
Exactly. The mechanism is like municipal plumbing. The foundational model is the main water pipe. It is absolutely vital for the city to function, sure, but nobody gets filthy rich owning a single standardized pipe once the grid is established and regulated. The money isn't in the pipe, it is in the factories and the houses connected to it.
Which brings us to how founders are actually using that plumbing right now. Because a lot of them are hiring what you could call the absolute worst employee imaginable. If you're a founder listening to this, you might be looking at your cloud bill and sweating.
Oh, the bad AI employee.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a massive drain on resources, mostly driven by a complete misunderstanding of how agents actually work.
Let's talk through the mechanics of that, because founders get this idea that tokens, the little fragments of words, the AI processes, they reckon tokens are cheap.
Yeah.
Fractions of a cent. So they give these AI agents incredibly vague jobs.
Right.
They just point an agent at a database and say, figure out our churn problem.
And because they assume cheap labor, they do not bother to constrain the agent. The agent lacks clear parameters. It operates on open-ended reasoning. So tries a solution, fails, replans, retries, hallucinates a new path, queries the wrong API, fails again.
Just burning cash the whole time.
Exactly. It enters what we call a token loop. It is doing massive amounts of compute for a task that nobody clearly defined in the first place.
It's literally like hiring a bloke who just walks in circles around your warehouse,
Yeah.
right? Just moving heavy boxes from one corner to the exact same corner, and he's charging you by the step. You end up with an unmonitored agent racking at a $10,000 cloud bill overnight, doing a task a human would have clarified with a 2-minute conversation.
It is wild, and this is where intelligent architecture becomes critical to survival. Let's look at how a company like Glean approached this problem. They realized open-ended reasoning was burning cash, so they built an agent harness.
Okay, what does a harness actually do in this context?
Instead of letting the agent use its own logic to figure out how to use its tools, Glean moved the orchestration entirely to code. The agent operates within a rigid coded framework. It isn't allowed to guess the next step. The code tells it the next step, and the AI merely executes the specific data extraction.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, that single architectural choice dropped their token usage by 24% immediately. It forces efficiency by removing the AI's ability to wander.
So if the big models are just plumbing with an expiry date and badly built agents are just burning cash in loops, who is actually capturing the value here? Because this flips all the conventional Silicon Valley wisdom entirely on its head.
It really does. The real winners of this current wave of AI are businesses nobody would ever call tech companies. We are talking about low-margin, traditional, physical world businesses.
Walk me through the why. Why them and not, the shiny software as a service startups?
Because for a low-margin business, AI attacks the structural coordination costs that have held them back for decades. Think about logistics or construction or healthcare scheduling. If your profit margin is, say, 3%, and you use an AI tool to automate your dispatching or coordinate your supply chain inventory,
Right.
you drop your operational costs by just a fraction, but it translates into a massive outsized spike in your actual net earnings.
Because all that saved overhead falls straight to the bottom line.
Exactly. And it is empowering domain experts to build highly specific tools. Take this brilliant case study of an electrician. He used a tool called OpenClaw to build his own load calculator app.
Wait, an electrician building software?
Yes, literally built it in an afternoon, and he sells it to other electricians for $12.99. Now, that specific app replaces the need for a $500 service call to an engineer.
That is wild. It completely changes the economics of who gets to build software. Because before, an app that never justified paying a developer a 6-figure salary to build it, it just wouldn't make commercial sense.
Right, the market was too small.
Yeah, but when the domain expert, the electrician, can just build it himself essentially for free, a tiny audience of a few thousand electricians suddenly becomes a highly viable, profitable micro-market.
It is the ultimate decentralization of software creation.
It's like finding out the bloke selling hot dogs outside the casino is making a more consistent, reliable profit than the high rollers sitting at the VIP tables inside. The minimum viable market size has completely shrunk. You just don't need 1 million users anymore.
No, you don't. But on the flip side of that, for those looking to extract cash directly from the big tech players, there is the current goldmine of selling training data to frontier labs. But it is a very specific and highly fleeting type of data.
Right, they break it down into these categories that sound a bit dystopian when you say them out loud, actually. Hours, judgment, worlds, verdicts, bodies, and rights.
It highlights precisely what the foundation models currently lack. They need human judgment to understand nuance. They need spatial understanding of the physical world, like how gravity works, how bodies move. And they need legal verdicts and rights to copyrighted material so they don't get sued into oblivion.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But founders building entire businesses around selling this data need to tread very carefully.
Because the model eats the data and moves on. Right. Like once it learns how gravity works from your data, it doesn't need to keep paying you a subscription for gravity.
Precisely. Each model generation graduates past the data that trained it. It is a constant treadmill. You always have to source fresh, increasingly complex data to push the frontier, which is a very hard margin to maintain.
Real quick, if you are keen to keep untangling this sort of stuff with us, just switch on your notifications for the show. Just make sure you don't miss out when we pick apart the next one. Anyway, let's move from the macroeconomics to the actual internal organs of a company. The way these tools are rewiring how a business operates internally is just heaps fascinating. We are looking at the era of the self-driving company.
Yeah, Replit is a prime example of this operational transition. They have essentially built an internal agent workforce.
Yeah, I was reading about this. They've got agents investigating production incidents, analyzing business data, triaging the support tickets. It sounds like they've automated the entire operations floor.
Yeah.
Are humans even doing anything at this point?
They are, but the nature of the work has shifted. Replit has automated the execution, not the direction. That is the critical distinction.
Oh.
The agents gather the context, perform the rote investigatory work, and present the results. But humans still exercise taste. Humans decide which problems actually matter to the business and take ultimate responsibility for the outcome. The agents just execute the tedious steps to get there.
And it's not just Replit. Like,
Yeah.
Sierra set up a dedicated 6-person AI acceleration team. Their entire mandate is just to AI pill the rest of the engineering org, and the productivity gains are absurd.
They found their engineers were 5 times more productive when they were running agents in parallel with Git work trees.
Okay, for the non-engineers listening, what is a Git work tree, and why does tying an agent to it actually matter?
Right, so a Git work tree essentially lets a developer check out multiple versions or branches of the exact same code base simultaneously. So while the human developer is typing code in one window to fix a bug, an agent is operating in a separate work tree in the background, writing tests for a completely different feature.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the human doesn't have to stop what they are doing to let the AI work. It is true parallel processing for human output.
That is heaps powerful.
Yeah.
But to actually pull that off, you need a very specific modern tool stack, right? Like, you can't just plug an LLM into your code base and hope for the best.
No, not at all. The enablers dropping right now are highly specialized. You have Google's Genkit, which is an open source framework designed specifically to weave AI agents into production applications using TypeScript and Go. You have Meta's Muse Spark 1.1, which has a multimodal 1 million token context window.
Meaning it can hold essentially entire textbooks of company data or massive chunks of your code base in its short-term memory at once without forgetting the beginning of the prompt.
Correct. And then you have integration layers like Zapier MCP. This is revolutionary because it connects AI interfaces to 9,000 corporate applications with zero configuration. No terminal setups, no complex coding. An agent can just naturally command the company's Slack, Jira, or Salesforce.
That's crazy.
Even Notion is rolling out read-only previews for Markdown files to make porting data into these agents completely seamless.
But hold on, if you are wiring an autonomous agent into 9,000 corporate applications, the attack surface must be monumental. You're giving software the ability to read and write to your entire business. That sounds sketchy.
This is exactly why security paradigms are shifting drastically. Tools like 1Password for Claude are becoming mandatory for enterprises. They use a zero-exposure architecture.
How does zero exposure actually work in practice?
The AI never actually sees the vault item, the API key, or the password. It doesn't ingest the secret into its context window where it could accidentally be leaked or memorized.
Right.
Instead, it gets a scoped, biometric-approved access token that terminates the absolute second the specific task is completed. Domain SDK is doing the exact same thing for managing customer web domains securely.
So it's not just handing the cleaner the master key to your house. It's giving them a digital key that only unlocks the kitchen sink, and then the key physically melts 5 minutes later.
That is a very accurate way to visualize it, yeah. And this security conversation leads us directly into what Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella calls the reverse information paradox.
Ah, right.
For enterprise founders, this is perhaps the most insidious hidden risk of adopting AI right now.
Okay, lay the mechanics of this one out, because when I first started looking into this concept, it completely threw me.
Imagine a claims adjuster at an insurance company using an enterprise AI tool. The AI reads a file and suggests denying a customer's claim. The human adjuster looks at it, realizes the AI missed a vital context clue, and corrects it, typing out the nuanced reason why this specific case deserves an exception based on company policy.
Which happens every single day.
Exactly. Or a sales manager flags an account as a churn risk, overriding the AI's positive forecast, and inputs the contextual reasons why. In both cases, the AI tool is learning how your specific company makes complex, high-value decisions directly from those employee corrections.
Right, so the system is getting smarter.
But the paradox is this: the enterprise is paying the software vendor a premium for the model, while simultaneously supplying the proprietary human judgment that improves the vendor's model on their servers.
That is wild. Like, I am literally paying a premium to train my own replacement, and I'm handing my company's core intellectual property over to a third-party vendor. That's a bit ordinary.
If you do not ruthlessly lock down your enterprise contracts to cover prompts, memory, corrections, and tuned weights, you are trapped. The vendor's model gets smarter using your IP. Over time, that intelligence is baked into their system. If you try to leave, you cannot extract what the system learned about your business. You are locked in.
Which is exactly why owning your weights is the massive rallying cry right now. You don't just need access to a model, you need the actual engine to tune those statistical weights on your own infrastructure. You have to own the brain you are building, otherwise you're just doing free labor for a tech giant.
And securing that infrastructure, finding that talent, and raising that capital is coalescing in a very specific geographic reality, despite all the remote work talk we heard lately.
Yeah, let's look at the cold reality of going to market and actually funding these things. Because with all this superhuman productivity, selling products and raising money has paradoxically never been harder. The geographic gravity is just brutal. If you aren't in the right place, you are starving.
It's true. The Bay Area now hoovers up 51% of all AI venture dollars globally.
And 53% of every B2B dollar spent. The narrative of distributed remote talent got way ahead of the numbers. The reality is a massive black hole in California pulling in all the capital.
It is a profound concentration of value, and it is happening during a severe, largely unspoken liquidity crunch. Venture firms cannot rely on IPOs or secondary buyers right now. Nobody wants to buy your shares because the exit markets are frozen.
So what does a founder actually do to survive that?
They have to embrace what is being called the discipline premium. Healthy private companies are having to rely on cash flow-driven buybacks to generate liquidity for their employees. This means you have to deliberately set your initial valuations below market rates.
Wait, you want founders to ask for less money?
Absolutely. If you inflate your valuation based on hype and an AI domain name, you set an impossible hurdle rate. You cannot raise your next round without a down round, and you cannot provide liquidity. Financial discipline, building an actual profitable business, is the only sustainable path to growth right now.
But remaining disciplined is heaps tough when all your go-to-market metrics are basically playing tricks on you. Take AI search, for example. Founders look at their web analytics and think nobody is finding them through, the big AI platforms. They think the AI search revolution is a myth.
Right, but the data is entirely obscured by the mechanics of the web. 70.6% of AI-referred visits show up as direct traffic in tools like Google Analytics.
Explain the mechanism there, like why does it show up as direct?
When a user asks an AI desktop app or a mobile app a question and clicks a link in the response, those applications strip out the referral headers for privacy or structural reasons. To your analytics software, it looks exactly the same as if someone typed your URL directly into their browser.
Right, so someone asks an AI for a solution to their accounting problem. The AI recommends your software, they click it, and you think they just magically knew your website. If you aren't physically asking customers on your sales calls, hey, how did you hear about us? AI search looks tiny, when it might actually be quietly driving your entire pipeline.
This attribution blindness ties into a much larger, more dangerous problem for founders, which is false product market fit. Traditionally, revenue is the ultimate metric for success. But in B2B SaaS right now, revenue is a terrible, highly misleading metric for product market fit.
How can revenue ever be a terrible metric? I mean, cash is cash.
Because a highly determined, charismatic founder can manufacture revenue without actual product fit. Through sheer force of will, heavy discounts, custom engineering promises, and personal relationships, a founder can drag deals across the finish line. It creates the illusion of a scalable business.
It's the difference between pushing a heavy boulder up a steep hill yourself versus finding a boulder that is already rolling down a hill and just steering it, right? The revenue from pushing the boulder up the hill is real money. But the absolute second you get tired and stop pushing, the revenue stops completely. That is false PMF. You are just running in a straight line toward a cliff, ramping up your burn rate.
That is a great way to put it. So the new standard for B2B requires organic, unforced behaviors. You need buyers pulling you into 60% of your first meetings. They have to come to you with the pain point. And you need a 50% close rate on those specific deals. If the buyer isn't pulling, you have false PMF.
And part of avoiding that cliff is being radically honest about what your company actually does. A lot of founders are drifting right now. They claim to be running a high-margin software as a service platform. But if your internal team is using your platform to deliver work for clients, and those clients never actually log into the software themselves,
then you aren't a SaaS company. You are a tech-enabled consulting company with really good internal tools.
which is a bit ordinary when you realize you've been pitching yourself to investors as a software play.
Consulting is a perfectly valid, highly profitable business model, but you have to pick one. The fatal mistake is drifting between the two. If you blur the lines, you confuse your pricing structure, you hire the wrong people, and you alienate investors who are looking for software multiples, not service margins.
Speaking of things that kill a pitch, you want to know the single word that stops a startup dead in its tracks during a sales demo. Interesting. If a prospective customer watches your pitch, nods, and says, "That's interesting," you are done. They are about to ghost you. It is the polite corporate way of avoiding a hard no without ever committing to a yes.
Because interesting lacks the necessary friction of genuine utility. If a product actually solves a burning problem, the customer does not say interesting. They immediately ask about pricing, security compliance, or integration timelines. If they aren't asking how to buy it, they do not need it.
So pulling all these scattered realities together, we are seeing this crazy operational shift. On one end, you've got the Olympiad Math Mafia founders, these kids who survived brutal elite math and science competitions, building incredibly resilient companies because they are deeply used to operating under extreme analytical pressure.
And you have builder executives, the managers who actually know how to get their hands dirty and orchestrate these modern tools and agents. They are getting paid salaries akin to professional athletes because the ability to bridge high-level strategy with agentic execution is so incredibly rare.
We're moving from a hyper-local to a hyper-cloud workflow. Your messy AI agent experiments stay locally on your laptop. But the second the workflow creates genuine value, it gets pushed up into the shared company memory. It's becoming a whole new nervous system for businesses.
It fundamentally changes the nature of human contribution in the corporate world.
It really does. Because when you strip it all back, when AI can reliably write the code and a swarm of agents can run the day-to-day road operations of the company, human taste is the only defensible moat left. Knowing what is actually worth building, having a pulse on the market's real pain, and understanding how a product should feel. If taste is the only thing left to defend, you had best make sure yours is sharp. Vocal Technologists, see you soon.
Spoken Tech for your ears.